when tensions run high, I know that it is tempting to match our child's emotions, right? Meet anger with anger. But if we're being honest with ourselves, that rarely works, right? If anything, it adds to the stress, to the disconnection, and the guilt on our part. So instead, I'm gonna offer you a simple de-escalation plan. But first, what do I mean by de-escalation? I like to think of it as your child is up here. It is the things that we do to diffuse the situation so that our child comes back down to baseline. But at its core, de-escalation is not about trying to control our child. It's not about trying to get them to quiet down at a certain timetable. It's about simply being present. You don't take anything else away from this video. De-escalation is about emotional presence. And this is not about being 100% perfect all the time. None of us are perfect parents, and we're not gonna be the perfect parent who can de-escalate our child 100% of the time. But I know that when tensions run high and we have an angry child on our hands, it can feel very overwhelming. And so it's helpful to have a roadmap where we have some do's and don'ts in mind. So this is what this episode is all about. So the first step in de-escalating an angry child is to avoid trying to rationalize with an emotional child. You have to remember that when our child is experiencing an intense emotion, let's call it anger, frustration, their emotional brain is activated, right? Which is the part of their brain in the back called the amygdala. And I'm not gonna get too technical about all of these things, but it's just really important to keep in mind that there's a different part of the brain that's activated called the amygdala. The frontal lobe, which is right up here, is where reasoning, rational thought, logic, planning ahead, controlling our impulses, all of the things that like make us human and we can engage in more higher order thinking, that's up here, right? And the blood is not going to this part of the brain when we are experiencing an intense emotion, especially for your child, okay? So when we try to meet their emotional brain with our rational brain, it's gonna clash, right? They're going to resist us, and it's actually going to add fuel to the fire. A lot of the times we do these things as parents and we don't really realize that we're actually activating our child even more. So rationalizing sounds like trying to give them a lot of information about the decisions that you're making, right? I know that you want to go to the park, but first we have to go to dinner, and this is why, and da-da-da-da-da, and this is the plan, right? That's all that higher order thinking and planning and thinking ahead, and this and this and this, and it's like, whoa, it overwhelms them, right? So instead, you want to try to appeal to their emotional brain by saying, oh my gosh, I know it would be so fun if we could go to the park right now. The park is so fun. I love to watch you going down the slide, or I love playing Sandman with you, or swinging you on the swing. What do you love about the park? I know, I wish we could go. And sometimes you say these things and they're like, yeah, I'm so sad. And it's like, yeah, let it out. Like, the park is so much fun, and I totally get why you feel this way. Do you see the difference, right? Just appealing to their emotional brain. Now, this is not about being a permissive parent and not having any boundaries or limits, or kind of always changing your mind at the whim because your child is angry at you. This is just about trying to appeal to their emotional brain by trying to meet them where they're at and trying to see the situation from their eyes. Wow, I know, it would be so fun if we could have a candy bar right now. Like, yum! You know, like, it makes sense, is basically the idea and the message that you want to convey to them. Now, number 2 is an angry child wants their feelings validated. And this goes along with number 1, but in order to try to help de-escalate and diffuse the situation, you want to try your best to validate their emotions, right? And a validation just looks like saying, you know what, from human to human, I understand how or why you're feeling that way. Like, I get you're feeling this way, and I can understand, you know, I'm not in your shoes, but I could see why you're feeling that way, right? And it doesn't mean that we agree with how they're feeling. It just means human to human, I validate you. I understand you. I get where you're coming from. And remember, all feelings are okay, all behavior is not, right? So emotional validation sounds like, I get it. I would feel angry too if I were in your shoes, right? That wasn't fair. This doesn't feel good. Like, I get it. That's what emotional validation sounds like. So tip number 3 is to say as little as possible. Now I know I've been giving you a lot of scripts of what to say and what to avoid saying, but really at its root, emotional de-escalation is about presence, right? And it can feel very overwhelming if we are bombarding our child with lots of words and fluff and blah, 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 right? It oftentimes can just, again, add fuel to the fire. So really, a lot of the times what this looks like is just being quiet. Practice your coping skills, right? Take your deep breaths. You're modeling this for your child. You're staying present. Your nervous system is being regulated. And then you can start that process of co-regulation, right? Where your child can kind of take cues from your nervous system to calm down, right? But we can't really do that if we are up here with them, right? And we're matching their emotions. So this is so important. A lot of the times it's about just being quiet and practicing your deep breathing, okay? Ooh, this is a big moment right now. I'm gonna take some deep breaths. Now, we're not telling them to take a breath, right? We are just modeling. We are being the leader in this moment and like, okay, we got this. I'm gonna help you through this, but I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna be a calming presence, right? I know that in order to diffuse the situation, I have to be regulated. So here we go. This is what the plan is, okay? Nothing else from this video. Focus on your presence. Less is more. Okay, tip number 4, this is really important, but stop addressing the behavior in the moment. And I know in our brains as parents, it can feel very tempting to start to scold them when they get angry and criticize them and give them this long lecture because we are really scared, right? We are like, oh my gosh, you're acting this way. I can't believe it. I need to control the situation. I need to get a handle on this. This is not okay. I don't want to teach you that this is okay and be a permissive parent. I have got to take the reins, right? And so our brain is tricking us into thinking that we need to start trying to control the behavior and teach them a lesson. But this rarely works, right? And you might think it works because your child just gets quiet, but inside they're probably scared and feeling very misunderstood. And we have to understand that at the root of anger is feeling like things are unfair. When your child is in that angry stance, they are on the defense, right? They are trying to protect themselves. And again, they are focused on things feeling very unfair. And so we are only adding to the disconnection and the fuel by meeting their state with, you're not right, and this is all the things that you're not doing right, and right? So stop trying to address the behavior in the heat of the moment. Your job when your child is angry is to, 1, keep everybody safe above all else. That includes you, right? We're not a punching bag. Establish those boundaries that are needed and help to de-escalate the situation, oftentimes by being a calming presence. That's all we need to focus on, right? Taking our deep breaths, reminding ourselves that this is not an emergency, that these things come and go, all feelings come and go, all feelings are okay, all behavior isn't, but it's okay if my child is angry right now and I don't need to focus on problem solving because I'm not going to even be effective anyways. So instead, I am going to just relax and I am just going to help my child return back to baseline. Now, it's not to say we don't address the behavior, but this often happens outside of the moment, right? When everybody is calm and you guys are reconnected. Sometimes, every situation is a bit differently in how you kind of approach things, but oftentimes if your child is in this really big angry state, you want to wait for things to de-escalate and you want to wait until you guys have reconnected. And then of course, we're going to circle back to the behavior, talk about what happened, play this tape. I can make a whole nother episode on, how to circle back to intense emotions and intense behaviors. But in order to de-escalate an angry child, we are not going to be focused on problem solving just yet. Okay, tip number 5 is to bring them to a quiet, secluded place. This is especially important if you are in a public setting, you are at a friend or family's house, or even if you're at home and you're in the common area and your child is experiencing a very intense emotion. A lot of the times what really helps them feel safe, contained, and like their privacy is respected is to bring them to another area. Again, this won't always make sense and sometimes this can not be helpful, but you want to think about, okay, how can I honor my child's feelings, give them the space, the quiet that they need, because a lot of the times other things going on around them, noises, stimulation, other people can just add to the fuel to the fire. So I would say, you know what, let's go up here. I'm gonna come with you. This is not about secluding your child to another area, like go to your room, right? This is about, hey, let's go to your room. Let's talk about this in your room. I have done this so many times where my child is like losing it, and I will just carry her upstairs to her room. We will sit there in quiet and peace. I will take my deep breaths. I will, give her physical affection if she wants it, but I will follow her lead, follow her cues, a lot of quiet, a lot of presence, and just helping her come back to baseline. And then this is a really wonderful thing too, because when they're back down, right, when we have successfully helped to de-escalate them, then naturally what comes next is reconnection, talking about their feelings and behavior, making a plan so that we re-enter the world as a solid team, right? Ideally. So number 5 is to just, whenever it makes sense, try to bring them to a quiet, secluded, private area to experience and express their emotions. Okay, and tip number 6 is don't put a time limit on their feelings. I know that it is so tempting to look at the clock in dismay and be like, I'm doing all of the things. I'm staying quiet. I'm validating their emotions. I'm bringing them to a quiet area. La la la, right? I'm doing all of the things and it's not working, right? They're not quieting down in the time at which I expect them to. You don't want to come at it from this place, because please remember that nobody wants to feel controlled. Nobody wants to feel like their emotions are being manipulated or they're trying to be fixed in some way. Especially when our child is very angry and upset, the last thing they want to feel is like we are trying to control the process and put a time limit on them. Remember, this is not our process to control, and we will feel very frustrated as parents if we are coming at it in that way. And above all else, remember, this is a relationship, right? And this is about trying our best. Again, we're never going to be perfect about this, but trying our best to meet very intense emotions with neutrality, right? Emotions are not good or bad, they just are. And lots of love and connection as best as you can. And remember, this starts and ends with our own regulation as parents. And just above all else, remember, there's no timetable for this. If you need a break, you need a break, and that's okay. Hopefully there is another adult who can come in and, you guys can take shifts if needed, make plans for these things, but there is no time limit to people's feelings, okay? So just remember that. And if you need more help with cooperation, with getting on the same page with your child, if you're constantly feeling at odds with them and like you have to yell to get them to do simple things, then don't miss out on my free discipline workshop. Please watch it. It is 45 minutes full of information on how to help you essentially turn the system around. And I use my research-based formula called CRG method, and I break that down. I give you very step-by-step concrete advice on how to help get you and your child on the same page, especially when it comes to discipline. So go to themomspsychologist.com/workshop to watch my free discipline workshop. All right, that is it for this video. I hope that it was helpful. Let's just do a quick recap summary of the points that I made in this video, because I know that it was a lot. But in summary, to de-escalate an angry child, try to avoid rationalizing with them and instead appeal to their emotional brain. Number 2 is to validate their emotions as best as you can. 3 is to say as little as possible. 4 is to stop addressing their misbehavior in the moment. 5 is to, whenever possible and it makes sense, bring them to a quiet, secluded, private area for them to further process their emotions. And 6 is to avoid trying to put a timetable on their feelings, right? All emotions are okay, and at the end of the day, this is their emotional process to control. All right, I hope that this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.